Trump is now asserting powers of one man rule that just seem antithetical to why we were even created as a country. And, frankly, it's kind of terrifying to be sitting here, and I don't see Americans reacting as though that's what's happening. And yet that is what's happening. And what's amazing is that not even half the country voted for this guy. So where the heck is the other half of this country? I don't know. I'm not a political strategist. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I can't advise anybody. I don't know what the right thing to do is, but I can tell you that history is very clear that allowing someone to not even be opposed while taking actions like this only 8 weeks into their term is going to lead to somewhere even more extreme and radical.
Speaking of judges, I want you to weigh in on what's been going on this week with the judge in the Venezuelan deportation case and Trump basically saying, not basically, he did say that he should be impeached, and the pushback from Chief Justice John Roberts. And everyone has been wringing their hands before this and wondering, are we in a constitutional crisis? What will it be? What will it take? Do you think we are here now?
Look, I have a different view of this maybe than some other people, which is that we're already in a constitutional crisis, and these are just different manifestations of it that we're seeing. And the reason that I say that is because the country has as president right now the only president in American history who has refused to accept the constitutional lawful results of an election, and that means that he's a president willing to exist outside of the Constitution or even in defiance of it. Directly challenging the rule of law is also something that is in, the checklist of the authoritarian playbook. And right now, it looks from where we're sitting as though, Trump and his allies are pretty much running through that checklist, going after the independent media, going after universities, going after institutions in our society that could possibly stand as independent checks on his authority. And of course, the biggest possible independent check on his authority is the judiciary, especially now that the Republicans control both houses of Congress and have made it clear they are completely supine. They are not playing the role envisioned for them by the founders of the Constitution. So I think it was almost inevitable that this kind of conflict would occur. Also, Donald Trump, if you go very back to the very beginning of his time as a political figure, do you remember when he started attacking a judge by name in the late spring of 2016 when he was becoming the Republican Party's nominee? And he started going after a judge in one of the many, many cases filed against him by name and saying, well, he's Mexican, and therefore, he can't be trusted with my case to be independent. And so the big difference, again, Madeline, if I look at Trump 1.0 and Trump 2.0, is that the silence surrounding his most outrageous actions. The opposition to Donald Trump from within his own party, even at times, and we can talk about it for many Democrats, has gone dark. Here, I'll give you a couple of quotes from Republican senators who found it disgusting and appalling that Donald Trump would go after a judge in 2016. Marco Rubio said, "It's wrong. I hope he stops." Republican Senator Susan Collins called Trump's comments absolutely unacceptable. And on it went at that time. Have you heard a word from Susan Collins this week? Oh, and what about Senator Marco Rubio, now Secretary Marco Rubio? No, of course you haven't heard anything from him. And I think that that's so important. It's not new that Donald Trump undermines the rule of law by attacking judges. What's new is that he has an instant mob that's willing to follow him down the road to places that we just haven't been before as a democracy.
Yeah, you had Rubio retweeting the president of El Salvador's oopsie tweet, which was basically thumbing its nose at the judge, saying, too bad, the planes can't turn around. Oh, well, oopsie.
Yeah.
and Rubio retweeting that, thereby endorsing it. I guess I'm wondering where this ends up because the administration did actually go to court to answer some of the judge's questions and then didn't answer some of the judge's questions. And I guess that has been postponed until tomorrow, yet another hearing. But could it get to a point where they don't even bother showing up in court and just do whatever they want and pay no attention to the judiciary? And then what?
Well, it's very interesting. I mean, I think just talking about the politics, we're not legal analysts, we're not lawyers here, but I think it's part of the challenge is that it's left out of the realm of law. It's left out of the courtroom, and it's part of a political war on our institutions and a kind of war that our judiciary is actually not very well equipped to fight, even if it so chooses. For example, the Rorschach test of the Trump years. Do you find it an example of, strong, important pushback from Chief Justice John Roberts that he put out a statement yesterday in the wake of the attacks on Judge Boasberg by Trump and the others? Or do you find the statement weak? Or do you say, as I sort of say, okay, well, I'm not sure what that statement means. I don't think anyone's listening to it. Justice Roberts went along with the immunity decision last year issued by the Supreme Court, which you could argue as much as anything else helped to pave the way, not only for Trump to win re-election to a second term, but to essentially give preemptive cover to Trump's sweeping actions to usurp the rule of law and the functions of the other branches of government. Without that immunity decision, I think we'd be in a different place as a country. So how do I balance Justice Roberts going along with that immunity decision versus a meaningless, statement of support for a judge whose rule of law he arguably has done as much or more to undercut than any Chief Justice of our lifetime? So it's a painful moment. And by the way, that's the thing about an authoritarian challenge to our system, right? Justice Roberts obviously is a believer in the rule of law. He has an incredible, delicate challenge now to do what's right in all these test cases that are coming before him, while at the same time not seeing the basic authority of his court eroded so much that it doesn't matter what they rule. And I frankly, I think that's as tough of a challenge as we've ever seen, a justice having to calibrate, because it is a strategy by Trump. It is a strategy. Does he expect to win all of these cases? My guess would be not. The birthright citizenship that you mentioned is one of them. But these cases serve many functions for him, even if he anticipates losing, even if he does lose some of them. Some of it is messaging, showing his fervent base that he's, taking the maximal approach to stopping immigration in this country, even if he himself is checked with some of those measures. But it's the scale and scope of it, Madeline. And I think that it's a breathtaking assertion of executive power so sweeping that if you take that along with the immunity decision, I mean, again, I'm not a constitutional scholar, but Trump is now asserting powers of one man rule that just seem antithetical to why we were even created as a country. And, frankly, it's kind of terrifying to be sitting here, and I don't see Americans reacting as though that's what's happening. And yet that is what's happening. And, my cousin, I wrote about this a few weeks ago, my cousin who lives out there in Los Angeles, who's a wonderful lawyer, sent me an email after one of these. I think it was actually when Trump fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs. By the way, an outrage that doesn't even make anybody's list anymore.
Right.
And that's a nonpartisan job. And she said, how come there's nobody in the streets? In France, they'd have taken over every government building by now. And those words really haunt me. And
Serbia, they're taking over government buildings right
yeah,
now.
Americans have been supine. And what's amazing is that not even half the country voted for this guy. So where the heck is the other half of this country? I don't know. I'm not a political strategist. I'm not a constitutional lawyer. I can't advise anybody. I don't know what the right thing to do is, but I can tell you that history is very clear that allowing someone to not even be opposed while taking actions like this only 8 weeks into their term is going to lead to somewhere even more extreme and radical.